I realised after my brain surgery that there was something new here. It wasn't just tiredness. It wasn't like, oh, feeling a bit tired. It was different. It was tough. And it was something I realised, having looked into it, that I was going to have to get used to and manage, and highly likely I was going to have to live with for the long term. So what does fatigue feel like? So you feel drained, mentally and physically drained. You feel listless. You feel, tired, quite often with a bad headache, and just feeling that you don't want to be awake, but you don't really want to go to sleep either. It's pretty tough. It also is quite debilitating. So if the fatigue's really bad, you just don't want to do anything else. And I've heard others say this a lot, that you just feel you just have to exist almost. You can't do anything. You can't function. So you can't say to someone with fatigue, oh, you'll be all right, push through. You can't. It's really tough. So how did I find out about fatigue? Well, in the early days, dare I say, a lot of it was self-help. Because I didn't realise I had fatigue, and no one told me that fatigue is a very common outcome from cancer and cancer treatment. I wish they had, but there we are. So I found out myself. So I went on to various charity websites, steer clear of Google, but on charity websites, relevant charity websites like Radiotherapy UK and For Me Brain Tumour Charity and others. And they have lots of information there, and it explained what fatigue is. I've had to kind of work out myself how I deal with fatigue and how I can sort of make the best quality of life I can. The body's energy is like a mobile phone battery, and if that gets below 20%, then that's when the fatigue really kicks in. So the challenge is to try and keep enough energy, or use as little energy as possible, or waste energy as little as possible, to retain enough so you don't get down to that 20% kind of figure. I find, and it may be different for people who have had different forms of cancer, but I find with brain cancer that overstimulation really uses up a lot of energy, brain energy, which can then lead to fatigue. So, for example, for me, it's like if I'm outside walking, I'll always have sunglasses and a hat, because too much sensory information can be overloading and cause fatigue. Not right then, but later in the day. If I'm out at a restaurant, too much information, too much noise can cause an overload. So I'll try and sit at the end of the table, preferably with my back to the wall, and if necessary, or if possible, try and go out, or when I'm out, seek a quiet corner of wherever I am, just to reduce the amount of noise and the amount of sensory overload I get. It's also recognizing that there will be days when you are fatigued. So for me, if other things that drain the brain, for me, cause fatigue. So if I'm having a meeting with lots of people, if I'm reviewing a document, if I'm recording a video, these things drain the energy more. Exercise, physical exercise, unfortunately, can also drain the energy a bit more. So have to be careful with that as a balance between doing too much exercise and feeling fatigued, continual balance. And so I realized that. So I've actually got a spreadsheet that, not that I'm a nerd, where I actually on a daily basis record the activities I do and how much energy they take. And I realized over time that visually you could see that when I had 3, 4, 5 days with a lot of activity and a lot of things I was doing that drained my energy, I would then quite often get fatigued. And if I'm doing exercise, I need to build up gradually over several days rather than suddenly going for it. So I try and reduce the amount of activities I'm doing by spreading things out, and also realizing that you will get fatigued. So planning recovery days. So if I've got a really busy day out, visiting friends, going uptown, doing a show, reviewing documents, whatever it is, I will then plan in a day where I'm doing nothing. And by nothing, I mean nothing. So it's relaxing, watching some telly, watching some sport perhaps, reading the newspapers, but giving my brain a chance to just recover. And calling them recovery days. It was a big changer actually, because then I could say to the family, look, I've got a busy couple of days. I'm going to need to plan in a recovery day. So that day, I'm not being lazy. Don't beat me up. I'm not doing nothing. I have to have a day where I'm doing as little as possible. However, a good enough night's sleep will allow me to then recover from the fatigue. But that's the only thing that allows me to recover. So once fatigue starts, it's a one-way ticket, unfortunately. So I need to do as little as possible once the fatigue has started until I've been able to have a good night's sleep. And then that will get rid of the fatigue. So in general, it's trying to do as many of these things as you can. Find out what works for you. I think with fatigue, it's realizing you're not alone. It's very common, and it's consistent, and it's enduring. Some people don't have it. Some people have it worse than others, but it's trying to recognize that you're not alone. There's lots of help out there, and there are techniques that allow you to manage and mitigate, and you can still go on and have a really good quality of life, even with fatigue.